Welcome to our Buyer Journey Masterclass. So lovely to see you all here. And we're going to talk today about how your buyer feels and what they're thinking and what they need. And we're particularly going to look at these gaps, like what is missing? How can we improve that experience for them? My name's Karen Rayburn. I'm the owner and founder of PF. I am also the author of The Accountant Marketer, which many of you have read or listened to, or at least purchased, and it's floating around somewhere. So some of those principles from that, those all flow from years of working with accountants and their buyers. And what we're talking about today is a reflection of, we talk to accountants all day long, and the attitudes of buyers have some similarities, even though your brand and your firm will deal with them and express to them in a different way. So that's what we're going to be covering and how those tie in. I'm also joined by Erin, who's one of our senior content writers, and she'll give you a little intro to herself.
Hello. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this today because this is just the absolute crux of why I love marketing. I come from about 15 years of marketing experience, but the reason I love the client journey and the buyer journey so much is because we're just diving into how humans interact and what they want and their desires and their pain points. And so what you're about to hear today is just, in my opinion, deeply interesting. I hope you will find it interesting too.
And also what's fascinating is that Erin is one of our content writers. So you might think, oh, she just writes the words. But what Erin and I have been discovering, and the reason we are delivering this masterclass to you with this topic, is because as we discussed the journey that buyers follow on a website, which leads to the words on the website, Erin was like, I have thoughts. I have things that will make it easier and better and faster for our clients. And we want to share those with you so that you can consider things from the buyer's perspective, so that ultimately, among other things, you can get content that reaches those buyers when they're ready. So we're going to be looking at the buyer's emotional state particularly. Those of you, again, who are very familiar with the accountant marketer know how important it is to know your audience, their issues, the questions they have. And also it's important to know their feelings, their worries, their concerns, their motivations. And putting those two together will help us identify the gaps in that journey so that you can then speed up that process for them. Now, I do want to stress that speeding up the process means going as fast as they want to go. So this, for some people, might mean that they take 6 months to decide, and that is as fast as they want to go. For some people, it may be 6 days or 6 hours. We tend to find with professional services, especially accountancy firm services, that you're going to need a little more time because they're either adjusting from a former experience or they're not familiar with how accounting services work. But speeding up means that they will go as fast as they want to go, which helps them and it helps you. So give them all of that information, which is based on the gaps that exist, which is based on how they feel and what their issues are. Now, I do want to address what a buyer journey is, because there are essentially two. There's the big picture journey of the owner of a business who goes through their whole business journey from very beginning to, selling or transitioning out. You may not be part of that entire big picture journey because they might come to you partway through. They started it, they ran it for a little while, now they're scaling up, they need help. For other of your clients, you are part of it from the start to the finish. Or they might get towards the finish and then you hand them off to somebody who helps them to transition or sell or merge or whatever their next step is. The other journey is the very specific, focused journey they take on your website. That is the one we're talking about today. Now, these two link together, as you'll see, but we are going to focus this masterclass on the journey they expect to follow on your website and the gaps when what they're expecting doesn't match. And when you know what those gaps are and you fill them, they get all the answers they need at the time they need them. They get to decide if they work with you or not. and they get to start as soon as they're ready. And you get a better conversation with them focused on the right things. So that is why we're talking about those.
I also just wanted to add, what I think is so cool about this is you guys know what this journey is because you are a buyer too. You're a consumer too. So you might not be seeking out another accountant or a bookkeeper or a firm, but you do buy products and you do buy legal services and such. So when we're talking about the buyer journey, we are fundamentally talking about you. I just think that's deeply interesting. And I want you to kind of keep that at the forefront of your mind when you think, how do I do this? You're a consumer. You're the one that you're thinking about.
And when you think about buying professional services, especially, think about the last professional service you explored and you didn't know very much about. So I remember when I was looking for help with the HR, outsourced HR side of our business, and I knew some about it because we had outsourced to another company. But when I started looking at different suppliers, because our supplier was retiring, suddenly it gave me a new perspective on how I felt, what I was expecting, how I thought the meeting would go, what I expected afterwards. So it is right to think, yes, this is about my buyer or my potential buyer, but you know how they might feel, or you can have some idea. And that's what we're tapping into. That's what we're addressing. Because the buyer doesn't work in a perfect, specific way. There's a progression they follow. They don't just become aware of you and then sign up with you the next day. I would even argue if they do that, that could be a little bit of a red flag. You know, those clients that are like, oh, can I have everything yesterday, please? And then you're going, oh my word, there are so many issues here. We need to take this step by step. But most buyers of professional services, particularly of accountancy firm services, begin to be aware of you. And then they go through a process of connecting with your free things, maybe buying a small paid thing, getting a quote. And again, this process could take 3 months, could take 3 years, could take 3 days, but there is going to be a progression that they go through. Now, for today's session, we're going to particularly focus on the awareness within your website and the information that they are beginning to gather. So you will often find that the content and assets you create, that you spend all this time on them and you share them, and then you do have to have a conversation with them about it. And you're thinking, my gosh, I spent all this time on this amazing PDF guide and they've only glanced through it. That's okay. It's there to give that awareness and have the conversation go better. Some people will read it in detail, some people will not. And Erin will later be taking us through the kind of emotional states people are in and the different kinds of information they might need. So what I would love you to think about, and please drop this into the chat box because I want to apply this specifically to you. Think about a frustration that you know a potential buyer, a prospect who comes to you, a frustration that they might have. Could it be about understanding accountancy services, or what do they need, or how does it work, or whatever it is that's on their mind? Think of the last couple prospects maybe that you've had and think they shared with me that this is frustrating or this is confusing. Just drop that into the chat, because we've got to put ourselves in the mind of the buyer. So that's what I want you to do now is think of the last couple buyers, maybe even the last buyer that you had or prospect, and said, they shared with me this thing. I'm not sure about this. I have questions about this. I'm wondering that. Drop that into the chat because that is going to be very relevant to what we're talking about in terms of creating content.
Yeah. What do they Google? What do they Google when they're searching for you?
Or what might they ask? Like, say you got referred. I know a lot of you get referrals. What might they ask their friend? So their friend says, oh, you got to talk to Barrett. You got to talk to this person. You got to talk to whoever. What might they say? And what can we do with it will be the next thing. Okay, so we've got, just back it up 1 second, Erin.
Sure.
So we've got a couple that have come in into the chat here. So this is a great one. How easy is it to get started? That is a perfect example, because the frustration or the concern in the back of it is Is it easy? Is it confusing? Is it hard? Does it take a long time? The how does it work question, also a big one. We often tell accountants that if you don't have a how we work page or our process or our way, you need one, because that is the question they're asking. They're not saying, I wonder what services this accountant offers. I wonder if they do accounting or bookkeeping. It's very unlikely that's what they're wondering. What they're wondering is, how does it apply to me? Jillian's got one. They're not sure how the UK tax system works, or in the US or another region, it would be that one. So if their frustration is, I don't know, and then Erin's going to take you later through, how does this make them feel? So they might feel foolish, embarrassed, awkward, uncomfortable, stupid even. And if you say, listen, if you don't understand how the UK tax system works, not to worry, we're here for you. Yeah. Then you are addressing their feeling, their frustration, their concern. Angela's put in QuickBooks, Barrett's put, will you be better than my last CPA? All of these questions, these are great examples. And if you think of one as we go through, just throw it in there. These are great examples because this is protecting us from saying, hi, we are an accountancy firm. Here is our website. We have been around since 1435 and we have 7 team members and here are their pictures. That's fine, but that's not what they're wondering. What they're wondering is, my QuickBooks isn't working. I don't know how the tax system works. And will you be better than my last CPA?
Yeah. Brilliant. Lovely segue there. So just to look at those questions again that I've just seen pop up in the chat box, I want to just kind of tap into what those emotional states are. If you were thinking, how does the UK tax system work? That is something that I think that was Jillian, that somebody would definitely be Googling, but they would also be feeling likely overwhelmed, lost, a bit scared. They don't know about the tax system. The tax system itself is huge. They're going to be feeling something about that, which is why they're asking the question. The same goes for when you're looking for a different accountant or you're just kind of sussing it out. You're feeling a little bit concerned or worried or unsure. These are all emotional states that sit at the base of the first time they're Googling these questions. Now, if I was to have you walk away with one thing and one thing only, it's that if you think about your prospect or buyer's emotional state when you are creating your content, creating your marketing and your assets, you are priming them to buy from you. And that is because we're all humans at the end of the day. And when humans feel seen, when they feel heard, you are fast tracking connection. And connection is what marketing is. That connection is saying, I know what you're experiencing, whether it's positive or negative. And then it's saying, and by the way, we know how to continue that positivity or transform that negativity. So when you think about how they're feeling, you're priming them to buy. So that's that. You also showing them how their struggles and their frustrations and their desires. Get to that first. So often with accounting firms, they think we're going to flex our knowledge. We're going to flex our experience or the fact that we've got a huge team or that, I don't know, you inherited the business from your father and therefore you've got 50 years of experience in the accounting industry. Nobody is Googling who has 50 years experience. I want that accountant. What they're feeling is, I want someone who knows their shit, who knows what they're talking about. That's the experience that they're looking for. That's the emotional thing. They want to trust, they want confidence in their accountant. So thinking about how they're feeling and showing that and speaking to them as a human is really, really important. And it's at the base of everything.
And I do want to stress that not everybody is immediately ready to buy. Mm-hmm. But they are looking for information that will tell them, do I take it to the next stage yet or at all? And that can be a success. So I think of the last few things that I have purchased or considered purchasing on a big scale. Sometimes I reach out and then go, oh, that's helpful information. Nope, I am not ready. And I stop. Mm-hmm. But I got help. I'm not annoyed. I didn't stop because I'm annoyed. I stopped because I'm grateful. I'm like, yes, I did not realize that. Now I need 6 months to do whatever. So remember that not every single person are we creating stuff for so that they can instantly buy. We're creating it so that they can decide if they want to move to the next stage.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, I was thinking about this before we started this masterclass. Like, what would you guys be thinking? Which actually, I suppose, is me thinking about your emotional state. But I would probably be thinking, right, I've got to think about their emotions. There's a ton of emotions in the world. There's a ton of reasons that we buy things and why we Google something in the first place. And you're right. And you can create assets and websites aplenty to kind of cater to all of those niche emotional states. But ultimately, when it comes to clicking buy or clicking fill out the form, most consumers, most buyers and prospects fall into these four categories. So you've got stressed and in a hurry, which we all know, you and I, that might mean they end up with the wrong accountant, but they're just looking for a quick fix. And they're probably one of the faster kind of categories when it comes to buying. And then you've got the wanderer, the person that's confused and looking for help. So if we take that, how does the UK tax system work? That huge question, that they would probably fall into the wanderer category. They're also a really interesting category because they're the most malleable, because as soon as you show that you are the one that can help them, they can then turn into the seeker, which is at the bottom here, positive, open and ready, because you've provided the answer. They've gone, that's my person, and then they get in touch. You've then got the explorer, another really interesting category, again, one that we've all fallen into, which is the person that's got time, who refuses to be rushed, who has probably got 3 or 4 firms and ideas of who they might go to, or asking a lot of people for kind of word of mouth input. They might also be the person that's been burned by an accountant before. They're just exploring, or maybe they've got an average accountant, but they think they could get better. That's the explorer. And then you've got the seeker, which I often fall into this category, quite trigger happy, positive, open, ready. They kind of have some cash put to the side, ready to go, and they're just looking for the right person. It doesn't mean that they're fickle, but it means that they know what they want, and that can mean a quicker buyer's process.
Just a quick question on that one, Erin. Is it possible as well that somebody could kind of cross over those?
Oh, 100%. And I love that you said that. Thank you. Because if you go to the doubtful person, let's just say that their previous accountant or their current accountant is got their taxes a bit wrong, or they didn't maximize their taxes properly, or they just don't get the niche that they're in. Let's just say they're a creative business and they're a big firm, one of the big 4 or whatever. They're currently an explorer, right? They've got their back foot out the door, but they're looking. Now, if you show them that you can see them and that you're for them, you can instantly transform them to a seeker. Obviously, being very mindful of exactly what Karen said, which is they're only going to go at the pace that they want to go at. And also, we're not talking to those accountants today who just want the numbers, who just want the clients. They don't want to rush it so that they're getting that retainer straight away, and it probably wouldn't happen anyway. But yes, you can transform them to anyone. You can also make them more lost as well, I will say. So
that you just pointed out, this could go very well or very badly.
Yeah.
And if it goes badly, they're getting more and more lost and never get in touch. But that's why we're talking about this. That's why we're helping you, because many of the people coming to your website are lost or wandering or exploring. And if they don't find what they're looking for, they become more lost, or they, I don't know, some other category where they're like, fine, forget this, I'll never get help. And what we want to do is help everybody to make a next decision, even if that decision is, okay, I'm not ready yet, these aren't the people for me. That's an okay decision for them to come to.
So, okay, you're thinking about their emotional states. You're just going to keep it simple for now and keep it to the lost people, the wanderers, and so on. That's what you have to do for anything to do with marketing. And it's what we will do when we're looking at kind of campaigns. And, you know, what a campaign is taking targeted assets and building them just for those emotional states. As I said, I'm really, really into this topic because we're tapping into that human mindset. But what we will do is we will find out, what are their core desires? How are they feeling when they're typing into Google, accounting firm for creative businesses. What age are they? What language is going to appeal to them? Are they more visual? Do they need more hand holding? All of that sits at the base of your marketing, and that's what will sit at the base of campaigns. And I'm telling you this because I want to just explain that we are practicing what we preach every minute of the day. This is a big lesson to be learning, I would say.
Well, and just on that campaign planner as well, this is a planner that we use with all of our clients. So those of you who are working with us at PF, this will be familiar to you because we'll be creating your own campaign planner for your campaign. And the accountants I've been working with recently on strategizing their campaign, whether it's for an event or a PDF guide or a particular service, the two kind of tabs within the planner that are most critical are the audience and their issues. And the questions we have are things like, what do they value? What are they afraid of? Why can they not do this themselves? And when you answer those questions, it changes the perspective that you take on your campaign. So the firm I was working with who's running an event, they were just going to say, oh, book a call with us following this event. After going through the campaign planner, they said, we're going to do it was something like a profits and potential review, or they gave it a name that reflected the things that they were covering. And they identified the 3 things that would go into that review so that they're able to say, here's the benefit to you of booking a 45-minute call with us. And here's a pie chart, and we will run a pie chart for you and show you what your pie chart is. That's a whole lot more effective than, hey, we have an event. Do you want to book a call? So going through those things, either part of the campaign planner, you're just doing it mentally as you consider the buyer, will help your campaign and your marketing be better, because instead of just telling them about your firm and your service, you are tapping into how they feel, what they wonder, and what they're fearful or doubtful of. And if you say, hey, we get it. You might be feeling like this. We get it. Here's how we deal with that. Gives them a little relief because they're sitting there tense, worried that it's not going to work out. And if you can relax that just a little and go, oh, that's good. Okay. Then you've helped them to move forward.
Yeah, exactly. I just, at this point in the presentation, I'd love to just point out that Barrett has said that he is kind of between a wanderer and an explorer. He kind of goes between them and then goes into being a seeker, which is exactly what we were chatting about. What I'd like to ask you all is actually where you guys largely land. Where are you guys when you're buying, when you're consuming products and services? As I said, I'm a little bit trigger happy. I'm a seeker. My husband is an explorer. Whether he's been burned by an accountant or not, he will take his dang time, for better or worse. That's largely where he will sit. But I'd be really interested to hear what you're buying.
Do you want to flick back just 2 slides to that one, just so we're reminded of the 4, Erin?
Sure.
And if you guys want to look at this and even think about something that you are in the process of buying right now or considering in terms of services or a product, are you right now feeling a little lost? Are you wandering? Are you exploring, or are you seeking? Because that for me makes it easier. Like probably everybody here knows that I've been looking for a house in a very specific place for a long time. And I am definitely the wanderer and explorer, but the second I find the right house, I will, like Barrett, move instantly into seeker. So it does depend what you're buying, how big, buying a house is much bigger than the pair of Doc Martens that I bought a week ago. And I went from wandering to seeker in about 5 minutes. But there's years of stuff that Doc Martens have done that caused me to move faster. And again, to Barrett's point, is the company providing what you need so that the moment you want to become a seeker and a buyer, you can?
Yes, brilliant. I'm just looking at these comments.
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps we're all, we like I said, we're all these sometimes. And yeah, I just see that I'm a wanderer here. Perhaps most of the time we are wanderers. We're all confused and looking for help at the end of the day, are we not? So
that is such a good point.
So, okay, we now know that it's extremely important that the emotional state sits at the base of your marketing and everything that you're putting out there. But what does a gap in a journey look like? So It could be that when you click a button, it takes you to, your expectations are not being met. So it takes you to the wrong place. That's ultimately what a gap is a buyer having this expectation and you not delivering on that expectation. It might be that if they're an explorer and if they're somebody that seeks communication, they might head to your team page first or very, very soon in their process. And the mistake and the gap would be that you have your services there. You go into detail about the bookkeeping part of it and kind of your process. Now, what they're looking for is human faces, a bio, details about who's behind the services. That would be a gap. It's not an extremely terrible gap, but it is still a gap and it's still slowing down that sales process. I'm just going to show you something that we did for our own client. They asked us to walk through their website step by step in each of the personalities in the categories that we showed earlier, the wanderer, lost, explorer, seeker. And they wanted to ultimately answer why they weren't converting a lot of investigators and explorers into the buying side of things. So if I'm just going to explain what you're looking at here. If you look at the pain points and opportunities, green is where our client was really, really delivering. They hit the nail on the head that their buyer wanted something and they gave it to them straight away. They got what they needed. Amber, if it wasn't too obvious, is kind of, in the middle. Maybe the buyer has to do a little bit of work, but they still have some questions, but it's on the website somewhere and they get what they want. Red is where there is a big old gap. This is a particularly interesting case study for us because it was all about language, which is why it's in the presentation. But ultimately, what had happened was right at the point where the people were getting in touch, where they were meant to be putting their bank details in, lots of people were turning away. They might be coming back, but they were turning away, and they wanted to find out why that was. Now, when we walked through in these kind of mindsets, the emotional states, we realized that at that point, when I clicked the choose button, I was expecting to put in my bank details. I was expecting to have a confirmation that I was selecting this product, selecting this service, but that wasn't what was happening. What was happening was a form came up and the form said, give me more details about who you are, your business, how long you've been running, what's your kind of biggest hopes and dreams. And so there was a real direct clash at a crucial point because I was ready to go, ready to pull the trigger, as I said, trigger happy, and it wasn't happening. Now, lots of people were turning away. If they had stayed, they would have known if they'd filled out that form, the next stage is the bank details. So there were two things that we recommended that they do. The first was to change it from choose to buying your membership. And the second thing was we moved the two around. So we put the bank details in first, and then we put in the find out about the business because our clients still needed those details. But and I think we all know this too, when you're putting in your bank details, you're not going to stop after that. You are going to fill out that form because you're committed. That was a really, really good example of finding a gap and fixing it. That's also why I love this, because this doesn't mean that you've got a lot of work. If your website is riddled with red gaps right now, that's not a big deal because you can convert them from red to green. You don't even go through amber. You can convert them because you will find out that where the gap is and know exactly what you need to do. When you dig into the emotional states and when you do this kind of internal look at who your buyers are and what they want, you kind of create these huge big arrows pointing to what you can fill that gap with. And I am aware that we are giving you a lot of kind of important information here today, but you should know that every single website, every single brand, whoever they are, whether they're Nike or Goldman Sachs, they're going to have greens and reds and ambers, but the goal is to be having just green and ambers and to have majority greens. And then you can just flick the switch and turn them, hopefully, most to green.
Just quickly on that one as well, Erin, presumably we can also follow this whole kind of map, not just for the wanderer, which you have, if you go back to that one where we've put wanderer, but you could also do it for the lost or the seeker or the explorer.
Yeah. It's also really quite important to say that you can really do this for any asset. And we're not telling you that you need to do that, but how they engage with a free downloadable PDF, for example. But for now, you know, the most kind of valuable use of your time would be to be looking at your website.
Yeah. And remembering that I was just doing a video on this today, that marketing is a science. It's not an exact science. I don't know where that phrase came from, because I cannot think of a science that is exact. The whole point of science, or the scientific method, is that you try stuff and then you go, whoa, that blew up literally in my face. So I guess I will try again a different way. That's what we do with marketing. We try something. So you might come up, we might help you come up with the most brilliant idea ever to turn your greens into your reds into greens. And it moves from red to an amber, or it doesn't move and it's still red. That's okay. We've learned something, and then we adjust again.
Yeah. Yeah. And adjusting is truly, truly the word, because you just look at who this buyer is, what they want, and then you can tweak those assets. You can create entirely new ones. Or in this instance with our client, you can change just one word. And I forgot to say that dramatically changed their experience of where the buyer was going, and the data supported that. The data showed that they were seeing that process through by this point. They were actually buying the memberships.
Yay, results. That's why tracking is such a critical part of your campaigns. It's a tab that we include in our campaign planners with you, because it's not just doing the campaign, it's tracking it and doing a retrospective at the end to say, what did we learn? And I always stress to every accountant I'm working with strategically on their campaign is, if we get to the end and we didn't have one person sign up or fill in the form or whatever, that doesn't mean the campaign was a fail. It's a little disappointing. We hope that our future campaigns won't be like that, but we take the learnings and we adjust, and we do what Erin's talking about here. We create different assets, or we approach it differently until we get those results.
Yeah, exactly. So ultimately, we're laying a quite simple 3-step guide here, which is, if you identify their pain points, and pain points can be desires, you know, it can be, I'm just a little creative business. I'm really ambitious. I have absolutely no idea what to do about the numbers. I'm lost, but I want to succeed. I want this beautiful life. The pain point there is, do I have an accountant that can do that for me, who can talk to me like a real human, who can really spell it out without being condescending? You can create a touch point there, which is, it could be, yes, it could be your homepage, but it also could be a LinkedIn ad or a Google ad. I don't think the creatives will be on LinkedIn. Who knows? There could be a LinkedIn ad or a Google ad saying, finally, no condescending accountants here. Download the PDF to explain exactly what profit, revenue, and cash flow is. And then once you've created these touch points, whatever they are, you convert it to a buying action. And that action can look like an email. It can look like picking up the phone straight away. It could be filling out that form, or it could be, you know, clicking that button that says buy membership, and starting their big journey with you.
Because what you're doing throughout all of this is figuring out how you can speed that process up for them with what they want and expect. And I love these examples that are continuing to come into the chat. We have one about, you know, getting a quote for home insurance and how you feel about that. You know, up until the moment you got the quote, you might have thought, I'm not even a buyer for this. It's irrelevant. And suddenly you've become, oh, I'm lost. I'm exploring. I'm confused. I'm frustrated. I'm a buyer. I didn't think I was a buyer. I guess I feel obligated. And if you knew and already had an awareness of somebody who said, have you just got a quote for home insurance? And do you feel like this? And you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I do. Now, again, this is why awareness is so important and relationship is so important. I'm working with a firm in the States who is helping people with a very, very specific niche tax opportunity that can save them up to $10 million in taxes when they eventually sell their business. I said, mate, if I was them and you said, I can help save you up to $10 million. If I didn't know you, I would think it was a scam. So you need to address, if you're worried that this is a scam, let me assure you, this isn't for everyone. There's a form for you to fill in to see if you're even eligible. This call that we have is to discuss that. And then you just answer the questions and worries.
Yeah.
And when we had this conversation, he said, oh my word, I never thought of that, because this is such a great opportunity. I'm so sad that so many businesses in this particular niche area are missing it, and I don't want them to miss it. I said, well, just tell them that. Say that in your content, say that in your video, say that with energy and care. And it will be very clear that you're not a cheesy snake oil salesperson saying, I can save you 10 million and it only costs you $1 million to find out. That's what they're worried is happening. So let's speed it up by tapping into what they're worried about and reassuring them by means of these assets that we're talking about, that the question they have, you have addressed many times before. And that helps massively for trust. So if you create a page about your pricing or a PDF guide about how you work or a list of questions, and they say, not only do I have this question, they've already answered it, and clearly they've dealt with this before. So this is not their first rodeo. I can have a little more trust. Now, your website is the primary place for these assets to live, to have their home. You can share them on social media. You can record videos on YouTube and embed it into your site. You can send out emails. But you need to have them live on your website because your website belongs to you. If LinkedIn changes the way they do things, if Instagram changes their algorithm, which they do like every 5 days, if YouTube suddenly changes the way they put ads in or whatever it be, you don't have any control over that. But what you do have control over is your website and what goes in it and where and how people find it. Now you can direct them to the pages on the site from social, from email, from a personal connection, a text, whatever. But having it on your site is ultimately what you want to get. Now we're going to talk about getting there in stages. And I'm going to show you a bunch of examples from other accountancy firms that we've worked with who have these assets created. Now, these assets they've created are based on everything we've talked about. They're based on the buyer's issues, the buyer's emotions, the buyer's progression. And you might be looking at these examples as they come up and go, oh, they have such a perfect website. Their asset is so amazing, and mine is so terrible. And just in case you feel like that, be reassured, we're going to give you some small things you can do. Yeah. Because the way that every single one of these accountants got to these beautiful examples is by starting with, what's the question? What's the frustration? What's the fear? And it might be a Google Doc, and it might be a sketch, and it might be some notes on your phone, and then it leads you to the good assets. So here's a couple examples. I'm going to talk you through the example and a little of how it's created, and Erin for each one is going to address the emotional state of the buyer and how those connect. So this one's from Starfish, which is a firm we work with in the UK. And what they addressed with this graphic, this image, this page, this very much like, here's what we do at Starfish and how things work. And that was reflected because within the strategy, we were talking about the kind of buyer that comes and the fact that many of the buyers of accountancy firm services are used to an accountant who always dampens their enthusiasm, squishes them down. So they're like, I have a great idea. And they expect their accountant to give them 7 reasons that it's a terrible idea and will cost them lots of money in tax and really deflate them. And so they said, well, how can we help people to reach for this freedom that they want and lean into this excitement? And the world is yours, all very energetic. And they're encouraging the buyer to see the process. This is a very specific process, but the process is there to help them, achieve that portion of the world there. So there's loads of other resources they have. This is just a graphic to show you, but they have guides, they have blog posts, they have videos, they have onboarding. They use this in their sales and all of these things. But again, this was the result of many conversations with Georgie and Emma from Starfish about how these people feel, and then what asset do we create to connect with them?
Yeah, I really like this one too because it's not spelling out their emotional state, which is fear, lack of confidence, doubt about their abilities. It's spelling out what could be. And I really love that as a marketing tactic too. So they don't think that they can get financial freedom. It's something they desperately want. But what you'll see here is financial freedom and capitals. The world is yours. What a brilliant message, something they probably don't believe right now. But they also see an accounting firm that's prioritized the word excited, who
Yes.
clearly believes in you. And believes in small businesses. So yeah, the emotional state here is kind of going between lost and maybe a bit of explorer if they're really experiencing some doubt.
Mm-hmm. And each one of these assets is going to be different depending on the brand of the firm. So this is a firm in the States who particularly work with MSPs. That's a very niche audience that they have. So they worked with us actually for a couple of years on their name and their brand and their website and the core messages. And only recently, probably within the past kind of 6 to 9 months, said, I believe I'm ready for like a journey graphic. A lot of accountants we work with see the marketing map graphic that many of you are familiar with and go, ooh, I want one of those for me, because I like how this is reminding you that you know how it feels to be a buyer. For those of you who are clients of PF, you went through this process yourself. You went, I don't know, I've had some bad experiences with marketing, not sure if this is going to work out. Oh, look, a path, a journey, a process. That's helpful. And then, of course, we had more conversations. So Paul's goal here was to help the MSPs identify what stage they're at and what stage they want to be at so that he can quote them properly, so that they can have an honest conversation about where they actually are, and to recognize that it goes back and forth a bit. Now, he's got, again, loads of other resources now. We worked on the graphic first, then a PDF, I believe PDF guide, right, Erin, that goes into more detail on each one of these stages. There's a website page, there's a video from Paul. We just went from one to the next, and then he uses those in pieces on his social media and in emails and in other places. And it's possible somebody comes and says, I'm at stage 3, let's go. And he says, well, let's do a little questionnaire, let's have a conversation. Actually, you're below ground. Let's be honest about where you're at. But the right person will be willing to engage in that conversation, and you'll be able to say, listen, let's help you move up that mountain. And he's got this very much base camp, Mount Everest sort of concept that he's going with. And that all ties in with his brand and the way that he addresses things.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny. I originally pitched it to be ground zero, not below ground. And he was like, it's a slightly more negative connotation that we're going for here.
Yes.
Let's just lift this one up a bit.
Yeah.
So we made it below ground. But yeah, the emotional side here is, and the emotional state, his target audience, his ideal audience is kind of more in the very ambitious, kind of driven category. So they're probably are more in the explorer stage. They've got the time to investigate, or they're actually a little bit lost and they don't know the journey that they're on. They want to know what that journey is. I would say less so the seeker in this instance.
And again, the assets are going to vary depending on your audience, and Red Earth has a very specific niche audience. And each of these examples you're going to see, Starfish focuses on this kind of person who feels this kind of way. Red Earth is more on a niche industry. And then Cap from Fractional Finance is working with certain kinds of business owners who feel in a particular way. This is an example of a pricing asset. Now, any of you who have listened to me before, in even the smallest way, will know how much I advocate for you to have some content about your pricing, even if it's just to say, this is a rough direction about how we price and how we approach pricing. You do not have to put the prices on, although as we'll see in this example, you can give ranges or starting points. But what you're doing is addressing the fear that the buyer has that they won't match the price to the value. They won't understand. It'll be more than they thought, or they don't understand how it's calculated. Or they might just genuinely be like, listen, is it 50 or 5,000? Is it 100 or 5? You know how this feels. Again, you know how it feels to be a buyer. When I was getting my kitchen redone, I thought I had a general sense of how much it would cost to get all of the things, redo the counters, redo the floors, the lighting, the electricity, the plumbing, the cupboards. I did have a general idea, but I wisely thought probably going to be more than that. Anything with a house, we all know that's how it goes. So I had a range in my head. And once my joiner gave me the actual range, it was higher than I thought, but I was ready for it because I had done some of that work. Now, what would have been helpful is if my joiner had had this website saying, listen, if you're looking at this kind of size of kitchen, you're probably talking in the 10 to 15. If it's this size, it's 15 to 50 or whatever it be. It wouldn't have surprised me, but I guarantee you there's people out there like, oh, I could do it myself for $3,000 and I'll buy all the stuff myself or whatever. You have the same with your buyer. Oh, I'll just do the bookkeeping and the payroll myself. And, if you guys could just throw this together, surely that can't be too difficult, right? And what you're doing is helping them to understand your process and do a little qualifying. This is a very specific line that has been added here. Erin was pointing this out to me before the masterclass. They've specifically said, we price this and also we qualify.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to decide and you get to decide.
Yeah, and the emotional state here is actually an interesting one. It kind of touches a few of the categories, but it was more about who this person was, and they are a type A high performer. They have got extremely high standards. They know a lot. They legitimately know a lot. They're kind of well versed on the language within the finance industry. And they're looking to kind of really go from startup through to selling and exit. So the reason that was specific choice of words within the pricing to say this is how we qualify our clients is for us to indicate that fractional finance had standards too. And so ultimately their buying tendencies, their emotional state is, I'm not going to pull the trigger. I will refuse to do that until I feel like this person will match me in my standards.
Yeah. And this is why their pricing says you're in one of these 3 stages and you're at least looking at this. If you're not ready to spend $1,000 a month or $2,250 or $4,700, the subtle underlying message is we're maybe not for you right now. Mm-hmm. Because you're not going to come to Kat and say, I know you said it's 1,000, but could I have it for $250? I mean, hopefully you look at all of her content and go, she's not going to do that. There are some people who try, but what you're doing is you are giving them the opportunity to decide what their next step will be and have a little framework. If they're not ready to start at $2,250 and possibly go higher, then they're not ready yet. And we've had this at PF. We've had people come to us and say, listen, I know that it's not cheap to get the good stuff done. I know I can, get it done by an amateur or a freelancer, but when I want it done, I'm going to save up. I'm going to save up and come when I'm ready. So that's okay. And it's healthy and good to share as much as you're ready to share. Some accountants want to put an actual price or range or starting point. Some feel less comfortable, but always think about your buyer and think about how you have felt as a buyer. Just saying, I just want to do it. I'm not going to go through an hour-long discovery call if they say it starts at $1,000 a month and I only have 200. And I don't know about you, but that frustrates the life out of me when I think they are clearly in this discovery call saying something they've said 1,000 times, and they could have sent me a video, and this call could be 10 minutes or no minutes. And then we could get to the same result. So I think there's a lot of professional service businesses and indeed some accountants who are so focused on getting the call that you forgot about getting the call with the right people. It's better to have 2 calls with the amazing people that you want to be talking to who are just about ready to go than to have 10 calls and make you feel very excited and your calendar is so busy, but only 2 of them result in business. So you've wasted 8+ hours of your time because they're just not ready. And it's a fine balance. Sometimes you need to try different things. And I've had plenty of calls with people where we've had multiple calls and they say, I'm really sorry, but given everything you share, I just need to think about it more. I'm not mentally at the place yet. I'm like, do you know what? That's okay. That's okay. We're here when you're ready. That is one of my favorite phrases to use because it's honest. And the only thing I want to make sure is that we've given them, or our clients have given their buyer, everything that they need to make the decision when they are ready. So this is the kind of information that Kat has given. You know, these are the levels of complexity. And then there's a video that says, we're going to review this and make sure that we're charging you the right amount. Every quarter, we're going to double check this. We're going to make sure that you are being charged the amount that you need to be and not being charged too much. Our own accountants that we work with at MAP do this every quarter, and they send a little update. And every once in a while they say, actually, we need to drop this down. You don't need this. And it helps build trust. I've worked with them for 7 or 8 years at least. And every time I'm like, wow, that's really nice. They're not just fleecing me for things. I know they're not, but it's a reminder. And then every once in a while, like, actually, this is going up. And this is why. So that's what you're doing with pricing. That's what you're doing with every kind of asset, is that you are identifying, if we go back, let me just skip back to these kinds of resources and assets, you're identifying the kinds of questions they have and the kinds of assets that you can be creating. Now, again, now that I've shown you all of these and you're thinking, wow, this looks so amazing. I need a pricing page, I need an onboarding page, I need a new homepage. Actually, I need to look at my brand and I need a campaign, and oh my word, this is so much. How am I possibly going to do all of this? That is okay. First, I want you to go back to that one frustration. So if you look in the chat, some of you have shared, you know, how easy does it get started? I don't understand QuickBooks. Will you be better in my last CPA? If you've had another thought about a frustration that a buyer might have during this masterclass, type that in to the chat now, and we'll add that to the list. But the reason I'm asking you to do this is I want you to simplify, because it is tempting to want to do all of the things, and it is totally fine for you to do all of the things, just not all at once. You need to do them one at a time. So the way to do that is you might have a list of multiple frustrations, but you need to figure out the biggest frustration, the one that all of the prospects seem to ask about. And then here's the great news, just start with the minimum viable content. And I'm talking notes on your phone, pen and paper, a sketch, a Google Doc with some questions noted that you add to, a Slack channel or whatever you use to communicate with your team that people can add to, one video that you send to one prospect. If you keep it simple to this, it protects you from going, do you know what I need? A full pricing page with a new graphic and a whole document and 17 videos. Matter of fact, I need to hire a videographer tomorrow, and they need to come in and do all of that, you know, and you're going to this massive place when you haven't even listed the questions yet. So start with the questions, start with the notes, start with I've had clients who I've just said, just create a Google Doc called onboarding. And I don't care if you don't even know what to put in it yet. So I have a blank document. And every time we talk, something else comes up and then you put it there. That's all you're doing. You're just creating a place to put this. I had this so often when I was working on my first book. I'm now on my second book and I've got drafts for future books. And people have said, like, oh my word, how do you do this? How do you have 5 books that you've all written? And I said, well, honestly, my first book I was writing for like 10 years. And I was writing it in these kind of pieces. Notes on my phone, social media posts, folders, Google Docs, blog posts. The only difference was I knew that there was a rough category and I saved them all. And then when I was ready to do the big content piece, the asset, the book, I just gathered and gathered and gathered and then spent a year and a half editing. But, you know, lots of learnings from that. The second one is going much faster because I learn every time. So that will happen to you for these assets too. So I would love for you to, and feel free to throw it into the chat. What is one either frustration or question or category that you could start working on some notes of? Put that into the chat, and we've got a few minutes and we can look at those. I've just seen a comment come up about good frustrations, which is a really great question. that the frustration isn't always like, oh, I feel angry or I feel worried or I feel concerned. It might be like, I have this frustration, and so we're going to address it in this way. It's just a very real thing.
Yeah, I think I'm reading it, Barrett. I'm reading what you said here. What about good frustrations? Like, one of the issues we have with our new website is potential clients coming from referrals the old way, and they're frustrated about going through the website. I think you straight up say, it might be frustrating, or this is intentional. We need you. We want you to come through our website. We've got really deliberate questions we want to ask you. Don't worry, or whatever. You tackle it head on.
Yep.
Would be my suggestion for that one.
Yeah, whatever you think they're thinking, address that straight up and say, now listen, you might be expecting with a referral to go straight to a call. Here's why we don't do that. Here's how that helps you. It helps us. It helps everybody. We want to get to a call as fast as possible. You know, go back to that speeding up the process. Be honest with them about what you want. The right person will say, oh, okay, I get it. I see. Like, I'm filling this in so that our call is more effective. The person who's not a fit will be like, well, that's just ridiculous, and I'm going to go to this other accountant who booked a call with me 30 seconds later. Well, bully for them. They are going to go through all the frustration and challenges there, and you probably dodged a bullet. So anything that you think they're wondering, address it. And if you find out they are wondering something and you need to adjust it, you can adjust it.
And also, just to literally answer this question, I would say probably it would be, I don't know, an email campaign, or to have it on your contact page on your website, or to put it up on your social media. You know, straight up answering that question. I also love, we don't want to get married on the first date. I know that might not be your tone of voice, but we need to get to know you first.
Yeah.
You know, take us out to dinner.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
That whole, like, being human and not avoiding it, but just addressing it straight on. And it's a great point about contact pages, Erin, because so many accountancy firms, contact pages, literally that. Here's our details and here's a form, name, email, box. But if for each different kinds of thing, so if they're inquiring about working with you, it might be this questionnaire. If they're just downloading a PDF, then there's nothing they're filling in. But the more you can ask for and explain why you're asking for it, the better. And you can always do it in stages. You can ask 3 questions on the website, but 12 questions or 20 questions in advance of or following the call. And every time you're just explaining to them why you're doing it and what you're hoping to resolve. So you're saying, you might be worried about this. You might be frustrated by this. We get it. Here's what we're helping you with. You need to look a little bit ahead. And again, that is building trust. Because all of these assets that you're creating, all of these gaps that you're filling, are because there is a mismatch with what they're expecting and what you're delivering, and you're just finding what those are and filling them. And the fewer mismatches, the faster they decide. And that speeds up the sales process as fast as they want it to go, and it makes it more efficient and better for you. So if you are wondering, where are the gaps in my website? Well, we have an answer for you, or we will have once we look at your website. So if you want to request this website journey review, this is the quick initial one. We have a much more detailed one we can do with data and going deeper into it. And Erin spends 2 hours pretending to be your buyer and, you know, going
That's
very
2 hours.
2 hours, 5 hours, whatever she spends. But she goes deeper into that. But we're starting it with something small where one of our team will go to your website and say, listen, I'm going to pretend to be a buyer. This is what I would be expecting. And we send you a 5-minute video to go through and say, listen, at this point, this is great. Love this, little confused by this. This one stopped me in my tracks. That way you can take that and use that review however you wish and say, if all I do is just change one button or one page just a little bit to make that buying journey just a little bit better. If you want more help, we're there, you know, to help you further. But I would definitely recommend start with this. If you're already a client, drop a note to your strategist or your client manager. If you're not, just request, and we're happy to do that, and you can use it as you will. We'd love to help point those out because we've got the benefit of being objective because we haven't spent hours on your site, or we're not you know, we haven't worked with you in that sense. We're just looking at it objectively and saying, we might expect this button to be here. This is confusing. This could use a video. So if you want that, Vitor's put the link in there, just fill it in. It'll just ask for your name and website address. And as soon as we get those requests in, we'll fill them within the next couple days and send those videos off to you. Other than that, that gives you enough, I trust, to go on. And I just want to remind you, just want to reinforce that what we're doing here is encouraging you to start small, make some notes of the questions or the process or the FAQs or just one little thing, and make progress on that. And then the next one, then the next one, because that's how you get to those beautiful assets that we saw and the results that Erin was talking about, where people actually are taking the buying action that they want to take. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.